Welcome to Refactor This, sponsored by vFunction. In each episode, we talk application modernization tools, concepts, and advice with industry experts.
Hi, my name is Bob Quillen, and on this episode of Refactor This, I'm joined by Mike Amundsen. Welcome, Mike. Mike is internationally good to have you on board here. Mike is, let me give you a quick intro here and talk a little bit about your background. I'll let you jump in then. Mike is an internationally known author. He's consulted with organizations around the world, particularly on microservices, APIs, networking, web development. And I love this on the intersection of technology and society. Maybe we'll get into a little bit of that this afternoon. He works with companies large and small and helps them capitalize on opportunities, particularly in the API microservice area and generally in digital transformation. I'd be remiss not to talk a little about some great books he has on one called Design and Build Great APIs. That's in the Pragmatic Programmers Publishing books, and also Continuous API Management, an O'Reilly book, and a variety of other books maybe we'll touch on where we go. But welcome, Mike. Aside from that intro I just gave, anything else you'd like to add on your background or maybe what got you interested in microservices, career arc? Just let you go from there.
Well, yeah, that's a wide open field there. You're very generous. Well, first of all, it's good to talk with you. Good to see you. I'm excited to talk about the topic of technical debt in general. But yeah, I come at this whole thing from a kind of a perspective of building relatively large systems. A lot of customers I work with have services on the web or on the internet, and many of them, more now than ever, are trying to transform existing valuable intellectual property into something that works on the internet and microservices and can be subscribed to in a lot of ways. So it's a really exciting, really challenging time. I've been at this for quite a while, and I'm lucky that I continue to work with great organizations and fine products. So I'm very excited in general right now for the space, and I'm very happy to talk with you today.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. Maybe if we maybe start at the beginning on basics around why microservices and kind of what's driving the motivation or need for microservices. Maybe we could start there. That's kind of a wide open question, but give us some groundwork to move forward.
Yeah, and that sort of leads to what I was alluding to earlier. The customers I'm working with right now, I have a lot of customers in established fields, banking, insurance, all sorts of other areas where they've been around for decades. They've got fantastic systems that do lots of great things, but there's a big challenge to turn those systems from, the word we use today is monolith or, sort of single purpose, complicated systems into multi-purpose capabilities or services. Very often we talk about this idea of turning your capabilities into a service. We're really good at X, Y, and Z. Can't we make that a service to allow people to start to use and take advantage of? And that could be super challenging. A lot of the customers I'm working with are trying to implement their microservice landscape for a handful of reasons. Some, like I say, are trying to create products. We want to turn all of this great talent and technology and intellectual property and skill that we have into services that people can subscribe to and use. Some are actually focusing on building internal platforms. We're not necessarily selling in every individual capability, but we need to kind of platform our company. We have to kind of transform it from a single software organization into a platformy organization. And finally, I have a lot of customers that say they need to modernize, and they often use the phrase technical debt. We want to reduce technical debt. Now that third option, product platforms and debt, that third option is actually the most dangerous. When you're doing products and platforms, you usually get a pretty good sense of what you need to do. But if you're not careful, you can get stuck in we're going to reduce technical debt and not really find the value and not really transform that into something new and better. Usually you're just kind of redoing it. So it's super challenging in that space, but those are the typical ones I see. Gotcha.
Yeah, I guess there's technical reasons around, scalability and reliability that come up. I hear that a lot. Is that kind of what's driving a lot of it. I also hear, the employee and the people side of, in retention of people. How do you recruit people to maintain these things? I mean, it's kind of more fun to work on microservices than it is a monolith. So I think maybe there's a spectrum of stuff too, from technology to people.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. You've got it pegged. I mean, a lot of transformation is not just technical at all. In fact, that's the minor portion of it. It's cultural. It's people. It's organizational. When you move from a relatively monolithic release structure and pattern and culture and turn it into that platform or products system, you have a lot more autonomy you have to build into the system. You have a lot more moving parts that have to be coordinated in some way. And you take lots and lots, rather than taking a few big leaps every year and say a quarterly release, you have to take lots and lots of small steps over and over and over. So it's a really, really big change. So there are lots of motivations. People is usually one of the key ones, I think.
Yeah. I would think there's also symptoms that are related to, there's the people side, there's the business side of just even not even keeping up with business requirements and being able to move quickly enough. It's a monolith has already, it sounds like it's going to move slowly, and microservices should be, moving quicker. So I know there's a intent there. Is that kind of a big motivation also in your experience?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, besides the kind of the conceptual elements of products and platforms, there's market pressure, right? So if it turns out, if you're in a space that is moving quickly technically, there are lots of innovations and lots of new products out there, you have to keep up. So you're kind of pressured in some ways to speed that time to market. So that's a really big challenge.
Gotcha.
At the same time, just figuring out what it is your customers need, and customers can be defined in lots of ways. A lot of organizations, customers can be the team next door on the next floor, or the business unit you just acquired that's in South America or Australia. So there are also other kinds of organizational pressures to make those changes. And then finally, just the idea of taking advantage of the intellectual property you have. One of the phrases that I use with my customers constantly is unlocking hidden value. You've got so much value, especially organizations that we might even say, we've already said monolith, I guess we might as well say legacy too. Let's throw that in there too.
There you go.
So-called legacy companies, turns out they've got millions and millions of dollars and just millions of hours invested in a really powerful system, but it may be difficult to get at that functionality. So you have to kind of, there's motivations there as well.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's difficulty in actually finding some of that value too and discovering it. So as one of the key steps, how do you recommend, if people are looking at monoliths, how to start prioritizing and finding that value? Is there a process or things in mind that you recommend?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of different things. I mentioned time to market is one of the issues, one of the pressures that happens. Another one is just scale. You need to figure out some parts of your services, some capabilities have to scale faster or scale better than other parts. For a lot of organizations, it's not the data model that needs to scale. The data model is pretty well established. Some of it is still maybe even on mainframes, which is totally fine. But you probably have to scale the ability to get access. So that's where the building the services comes in. So scale also means you're going to have to make sure that the system is safe while it's running. So you've got runtime security and all sorts of other things that you've got to tackle as well. So you have this idea of scale and speed and safety all kind of interplaying with each other. You don't want to become more unsafe. One of the advantages of a monolithic style or a monolithic approach is you pretty much know where all the parts are. You pretty much know how they interact, and you pretty much know where the dangers are. There's a limited kind of surface area. When you start to create microservices and use APIs to get after them, you're actually increasing your exposure, increasing your service area. So you have more challenges at that safety level, which is also really, really important as well.
Yeah, you hear a lot of folks talking about, moving back to monoliths, or maybe starting with a monolith and moving to a microservice. And I think sometimes we you make the monolith the anti-hero in this or the enemy, but in some ways it's a viable pattern, for certain
absolutely.
situations. Yeah. And people
absolutely.
did it for a reason, right? Right.
Excellent reasons. And they continue to do it for excellent
Right.
reasons. When you think about a startup, right? Startups are typically, maybe 5, 6, 7, a dozen people. When you have a dozen people in the organization from top to bottom in a startup, I don't need 50 microservices. That's a disaster. Right. Typically, I just need one service that works. Let me get one capability out there that some customer wants. Right. As your product grows and as your organization grows, you need to start thinking about breaking up those capabilities into manageable units. Yep. So a lot of times what you want to do is you want to retain that autonomy of a small to medium-sized team, 5 to 15 people maybe. That might mean that that's a capability or that's a service. Right. So if you got 150 people, you don't necessarily have one service anymore. You might have 8 or 10 or 12. So often the monolith makes sense, and even sort of what I've kind of termed mini monoliths, like my team or my product group or my my stack, Kiritsu, however you want to use the phrase. We kind of have our own, monolithic way of dealing with this, but we have to interact with everyone else. We have to create an API, we have to document it, we have to secure it and all those other things, and treat it like the product that it is, even if it's just internal. So there are lots of reasons to have, a clearly defined unit. What we don't want is tiny little Legos laying around, and every time I need something, I've got to spend a whole bunch of time reassembling every single part. So I need some kind of, proper fit. And that's the way I kind of think about it.
Gotcha. Yeah. It seems like, there's also back and forth in terms of ebb and flow. Organizationally, many companies grew very large, and everything was centralized in one big headquarters, and kind of reinforced these, maybe a monolithic team and a monolithic architecture. We've gone kind of much more remote, decentralized now. We're talking about decentralized internet, and kind of that reorganization of how to build distributed teams. It makes more sense maybe now as we look at microservices too, that align with that kind of mentality, be able to break things up and organize it on a smaller basis.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on another one, which is as sort of the culture changed in general, whether we were doing more remote work or we were operating in smaller teams, you need the tooling and you need the rest of the environment to kind of fit along with that. Centralized decision making works, but that has a speed limit. There's the phrase, "You're only as strong as the weakest link." One of the variations I've used on that is, you can only move as fast as your slowest team. So if time to market is really important, you need to figure out how to improve that's at that scale as well. So yeah, I think there's lots of pieces to the puzzle in terms of making sure that you're responsive both to the internal pressures, internal market needs, and external market needs.
Yeah, I love how you talk about microservice architectures and that balance between speed, which you just talked about, and then there's safety, which is managing risk. And we hear that a lot from, especially someone that has a monolith, is running in the cloud already, or it's running, and it's like, I'm running my business on it. It's still viable. I want to invest in it, but I can't, in flight, take the airplane apart and refuel it and all those things I need to do and keep running. So the risk management's hard. Then doing it, like you said, at scale, that must be hard to balance those from an architectural point of view.
Yeah. And I think it's a constant balance, right? So
Gotcha.
It's the three legs of the stool kind of approach. We can start to speed up, but that's going to increase our risk, or that's going to reduce our safety. But we can start to scale out, but that may slow us down a little bit, right? So you're always making those choices. So one of the books that you mentioned that I did with a team of individuals, Continuous API Management, we talk a lot in that notion about you're always looking to figure out how to improve somewhere. Goldrat's book, The Goal, right? I don't know if you remember this. It's a great book, and he talks about focus on the choke point, focus on the thing that really needs attention. And if you have this sort of continuous approach, or the continuous improvement, whatever you want to, however you want to think about it, you focus on that challenge until you beat that challenge, until you win, and then you go to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So setting up your organization to make that possible gives you the chance to constantly balance those things like speed and scale and safety and other factors.
Yeah, you talk about like the 4 principles of successful API migration, modernization. And you kind of hit the first one there maybe a little bit, which is like one byte at a time. And I love the idea of, coming into modernization. For me, I kind of thought we're going to take a whole architecture, we're going to tear it apart and put it back together. And the customer, like, no, we're iterating. We're doing, we got to get one service running. We're going to get that, and we're going to run that all the way through. And then we're going to go work on the next one. So it's a very much, is that kind of what you've seen? Obviously, it's one of your recommendations.
Yes, for lots of reasons. So first of all, almost all the companies I work with, they have an up and running business, up and running concern. They have products and services and customers. They can't just do a greenfield, run out somewhere into the countryside and build a brand new, Frank Lloyd Wright, beautiful building. This is urban renewal. This is like every single day. I have to do something. So yeah, that one bite at a time notion is sort of like, how do you eat an elephant, right? If one bite at a time, if you're not a vegetarian, I guess. But the real version of that, the real life version of that, I learned from Adrian Cocroft. He's talked about a lot of this when he was at Netflix, and he said, we do one thing, right? We do one thing, and we solve that problem. We find the smallest thing we can do to have the greatest impact. We do that one thing, and then we move on to the next thing. One of the other things I learned from Adrian's talking is that not only do they do one thing, but they do actually one thing. If we need to modify the object model and we need to modify the database, one release is modifying the object model. That's the release. The next release, after that's successful, is modifying the database, right? You really focus down. And so it's every single step is a deliverable. And that's where DevOps really kind of comes in. And then the other things we talked about, the other 4 parts of that is patterns we learn from code: the strangler pattern, the facade pattern, the refactoring pattern. The strangler pattern is a great example. This idea of reducing some part in the monolith. Maybe I got a search function in the monolith. Let's go ahead and set the search function up as a service. We'll leave the rest of the monolith there, but we'll just route to the new search function service as we need it, and you slowly replace those parts. I think one of the other ones that we learned,
managing that risk in there too, and the safety along with the with the one byte at a time.
One of the other ones that comes from Amazon, Werner Vogel's and Amazon Web Services, is that APIs are forever. You promise an interface to somebody, like they promised S3 interface, like the S3 bucket. It's been around for almost 15 years now, I think. They can't just change that and then break everybody. That API is forever. That's a promise you make. They've done very, very extensive changes to the operations in the feature set of S3, but they've never broken the original S3. If you have a version 1 client for S3, that thing still works. So APIs are forever. So yeah, you keep making changes and you refactor and all those other things, but that interface promise, you can't just change whenever you want to, because now what you're doing is you're making your customers spend money on a sprint because of something you did. They may not even want this new feature, right? And then
so
there's
spend extra time on the API and use that as your abstraction, let the change happen underneath it. But invest in making sure the API was there first. Makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. And then there's the thing we talked about already, is continuous change also means reversibility. Learn that from Martin Fowler and ThoughtWorks. If you put in a production change and it doesn't work, you should be able to back it out right away. That's a technical skill that you really need if you're going to create a platform of products, a portfolio of services. So one byte at a time, the refactoring, APIs are forever, the reversibility of a release. We got that from Etsy. Etsy is really good at what they call the dark release program, where you make a change, you turn the feature off, you put it into production, you use the same monitoring tools, you make sure it's still running just fine. If it is, you turn that feature on for a small group of people. If it's still running fine, you can roll that out to other people. And that's your constant pattern. So right there, that's a skill set that is very valuable, and that changes your culture. Every one of those steps can change the way organizations work.
I think a lot about how you build bridges from a team that's focused on the monolith and how they operate to now moving to, new kind of more cloud native best practices and approaches like, blue green, like Strangler, et cetera.
Yep.
And you could take the monolith and you're starting to not only teach them how to refactor and move to a cloud native microservice, but also the DevOps patterns to make it work, to iterate on it, to be able to refactor and manage that change in a safe way. That's been proven by many of the the massive companies that are out there on the internet side right now. So
yeah, I think from my perspective, DevOps is the result of the kinds of changes we need to make, right? We need to automate the parts that you repeat over and over again, like build and deploy and test. We don't need to automate the parts which are creative thinking, which is problem solving, which is creating great products. We need to automate, and that's like an Intel deal, right? So we improve the quality of the product through automation. So DevOps gives us that chance to do that, and yeah, that's a culture change as well. Continuous build, continuous integration, continuous release. Each one of these are steps along a continuum as well that are super challenging. But again, if you're gonna meet those needs in the market, often that's where you need to go.
Yeah, bringing those cloud native best practices back into modernization, which can be kind of old and stodgy. Now we're using new approaches that are fresh. We could think about continuous modernization, something you do all the time. Technical debt, something that just doesn't happen overnight. It slowly creeps up on you, and then suddenly it's there, and it's something you need to manage all the time, I would expect.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about the debt, like the scary thing, that dark, scary thing. But debt, I mean, you've written about this too. So I mean, debt is really, it's something that you kind of acquire over time, right? It isn't something that you build in automatically. So we'll just bury the debt over here. And this is something that happens over time. So all of these things we're doing to kind of help us with our time to market and the skill set of one byte at a time and APIs are forever. They're all ways to kind of chip away at the accumulation of code that's not working the way it should be, or a feature that isn't needed anymore, or the lack of a feature. A lot of times I run into organizations where their customers needed a feature, a functionality. They don't have it in their monolith, but what they have are incredibly creative people. They say, you know what? If we take feature A, and then we take the output of feature A and transform it just a little bit, and throw a couple other things in from feature B, then we actually have this new feature X that they really, really want. So people are incredibly creative. Well, now it turns out you've got a really unexpected or unintended dependency between A and B in order to get X. Now you have another kind of debt, and that debt is often visibility. A lot of challenges my customers have are, how do I know where the dangerous parts are buried? And that takes a level of analysis that can be really, really challenging.
Yeah, I think a lot of work that we do around assessment is looking at dependencies and just giving you a sense of, like, what do you have? How does it work? What are the aging frameworks you have? How are things interrelated? The architectural interrelationships are kind of hard to see, especially forest in the trees kind of things. And a monolith kind of covers a lot of that up. And like you said, how do I reach inside and understand where my debt is and where to start? And sometimes that's the hardest thing, is where do I start, right?
It really is. When I talk to customers, that's actually a big question. They say, okay, sure, Mike, I love this. I love your models and your approaches. But where do I point this thing? How do I get started?
Yeah, exactly.
And that is really, really challenging. And a big part of it is this visibility, or this ability to look into the box, right? A lot of us, we have a lot of black boxes in what we've done. I work in a lot of organizations where, no, that was Mary. She was here 15 years ago, built this thing that we all use, and Mary's moved on. She's in another part of the organization now. So we're not sure anymore. I have a story. I won't mention the company, but they hired a new CTO. The first thing that the CTO said is, we have about 300 engineers and we have about 400 services. And what has happened, is every time somebody wanted to make a change, they were too nervous to perturb the existing system in any way. They would just
Mhm.
create something new and add it to
Right.
the pile.
Mm.
And they lost all visibility and all sense of what path was what. How do you
Right.
analyze where
Right.
this is going? So they needed a lot of work to create that
Mhm.
observability and that monitoring and that ability to
Right.
see where the expense is. Another big question, and we've touched on this. I know you've touched on this. How do I know where to spend my dollar?
Mhm.
What's
Right.
going to make a difference? We talk
Right.
about the Cockcroft one bite at a time. Well, fine. Where do I
Mhm.
start? This is
Yeah.
a huge set of problems. You need some serious tooling in order to
Mhm.
understand. One of the questions leadership asks very often is, I spent all this money 5 years ago, guys. How come
Mhm.
it costs me more money now
Right.
to try to get
Exactly.
some of this out? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's the carrying forward old code. There's dead code sitting in there. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
One thing we saw a lot coming into this market is that there's a lot of bloated microservices too, because they just kind of
Yeah.
carry all that old debt and they don't know. I don't know what that did, but I think it's important, and I'm just going to take it
Yeah.
forward. So now you have these bloated microservices, which sometimes are worse than the monolith they came from. And so having that visibility, as you talk about, and be able to pull apart what's working, what's important, and kind of see inside the machine around that shell is it's inside the black box, I think is a big thing.
It's a huge important element. One of the things I talked about earlier is people using refactoring and facades, right?
Yep.
That's
right.
If you're not careful, if you just build the facade and then walk away, you
Right.
now have more code than you used to before. The
Right.
facades are supposed to give us this opportunity to create this stabilizing
Right.
structure, and then
Right.
go back behind the scenes.
Mhm.
And now you can start ripping the wires out because there's already something that's stable. So
Yeah.
you have to make sure you complete the cycle. You have
Right.
to target what's important. You have to
Mhm.
build that facade to stabilize it. Then you have to go back, transform what you have into
Mhm.
something better. And then
Right.
often you don't need that facade anymore. So
Mhm.
you're exactly
Yeah.
right in the sense that if you're not
Yeah.
careful, you can make it worse.
Mhm. Yeah, you kind of talked about one of my favorite things. I love catchy acronyms, and your STAR model is right along that line of stabilize, transform, add, and repeat. That's it.
Yeah.
But the stabilize and transform part is one we see a lot, which is even in lift and shift, when people migrate, they'll put something up in the cloud, and then that's like, we're done. Like, no, all you've done
No.
is move your monolith from one space to another. Now you've changed your data center more or less,
Yep.
which can have good repercussions, but you haven't actually transformed anything really. So
Right.
so
That
yeah.
Go ahead.
I
was going to say that
let you go into
that
STAR.
model.
Yeah.
That model of the STAR idea
Mhm.
is really
Mhm.
just what you were talking about. This notion of let's stabilize. I often urge people, get yourself a proxy, get yourself a facade in
Mhm.
place. This is exactly
Mhm.
how we would do it in
Right.
code, but now we're going to do
Right.
it on the network with services and machines. Then
Mhm.
once you have that stabilizer, you can start to transform behind the scenes, which is exactly what we were talking about before. I can sometimes take what was native code and actually use an API from a third party, or
Mhm.
I can bring in some COTS, some off-the-shelf, commercial off-the-shelf
Right.
software to solve that particular part of the organization now, whereas before it would have been really, really costly to do it. Now, as you start to do that transformation, when somebody wants to add a feature or a service, you want to add some new functionality, you can
Mhm.
treat that like a separate event, a separate sprint. That's another step. So like we were saying before about, we move some search out of the monolith into its own
Right.
step. Maybe we want to add a new customizable
Mhm.
way of searching. That's a totally new feature. Build that feature and put it into the mix, into the collection through
Mhm.
the proxies. So that's that
Right.
adding new functionality.
Mhm.
And then the biggest part, which we've alluded to over and over again, is fine. We've done the stabilize, the transform,
Right.
and the add. Now we've got to repeat that over and over and over. And that's
Right.
that's sort of the continuous part. And when you see your work as this ability to stabilize what's there, transform what's needed, add the new functionality, and then move on, that's a
Mhm.
great business. That's a
Yeah.
great service that you're doing to everyone. You're improving
Mhm.
developer experience, customer experience, changing the bottom line, making it more flexible and applicable to the market needs. You're creating a different kind of culture inside the organization that really is built on that notion of continuously finding a way to make it just a little bit better every day.
Yeah, I love the fact that it's not just so many people think this is a project and it ends, and it's a cycle. It's a life cycle and it's a best practice. It's something you do all the time. Is that continuous element, as you mentioned, the repeat. Otherwise, it's just STA. It's just stop. You need the R at the end to make it interesting. So
yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I needed that R. What would I do? How about we repeat it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool. Well, that's great. I guess that hits a lot of the major items I wanted to talk about. What are you working on next? What's next for Mike in terms of some of the things you're looking forward to, or some of the things you're looking out in terms of next challenges? Or
actually, I just finished a project, another book for O'Reilly, which is RESTful Web API Patterns and Practices Cookbook. I tried to throw as many cool SEO words in there as I could. It's really a collection of patterns I've learned over the years from all these companies I've worked with, and it's applied specifically to the notion of distributed data and distributed systems, distributed problem solving. So that's just released. So we're focusing on that. I continue to visit with customers, although we do it much more remote, often remotely now. But there's always something new, and I'm excited to travel, even though I've done it for so long, because I learn something new every single time. And so I'm excited. There's always a chance to learn, and I'm looking forward to the chance to learn more.
Cool. There you go. Cool. Just if we kind of go into, sometimes we do a lightning round at the end, but the idea of, this is more, what should we know about Mike in terms of how he likes to relax or kick back, or do you have any ways to disconnect? That it's not like you like to travel. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I live in Northern Kentucky in the United States, and not too far from here, a couple hours from here, my son has a cabin in the woods.
Oh, wow. Nice.
In the Red River Gorge area, which is internationally known as a great destination for hiking and biking and rock climbing. I can't do any rock climbing at my stage in life, but I love hiking. I love trail biking, simple trail biking, what we call gravel biking today. So I do a lot of that. And if I'm really lucky, I also get a chance to play music. I grew up as a musician. I had a previous life where I was an arranger. I did commercial music and played on stage a lot. So I have a bunch of electronic instruments, and sometimes I get to unwind doing.
What was your keyboard player or?
No, saxophones, reeds. Saxophone. So I started out as clarinet and spent a lot of time in saxophone. I now have a wonderful MIDI saxophone device. It's really quite amazing.
That's neat.
And I get to, it feels just like a real horn, and I have a great time with it. Yeah.
Is there a different musical instrument you'd love to master one day?
Oh gosh. I do enough keyboard to be dangerous and somewhat entertaining, as long as you don't look too deep. Maybe getting better at that. My son got out nylon string classical guitar, which I used to do decades ago. That's actually cool. That might be kind of nice. But I've got my hands full just trying to deal with what I have today. I don't know if I've got any brand new horizons in my future, but hey, you never know.
Yeah, you never know. So, well, that's cool. Well, Mike, it's been great talking to you. Thanks for your time. Pleasure talking to you today, and look forward to talking to you more. And we'll see you out there. Thanks, Mike.
You bet. Bye-bye.